Hello and welcome to another edition of the Wake Up Call with Jason Joseph and my guest, Jim Nunnelly, or sometimes as I call him, Jim Tiberius Nunnelly. Jim has been interviewing me for about the past two episodes about the comings and goings of the call, where we've been, where we're going, and where we currently are. And today, he's going to throw me a curveball and wants me to ask him questions. So we're going to see how this goes over and see if I can get some information out of Jim about what he thinks of the call and where it's going and where it's been and where it should go. So we're just going to turn this upside down, I think.
All right.
How about them apples?
That's fair.
So, Jim, let's start with where the call has been. How did you get with the call?
Well, it really just I was told when I left Columbia, Missouri 60 years ago, I was told by my high school coach to look up two people. One was Maynard Harvey, who was a big deal in the Masons here for a long time. His son is Dwayne Harvey, now the funeral director. And the other person was Lucille Bluford. And, of course, I didn't know anybody, and so I just went to Lucille and just introduced myself. And she said, if you want to talk to me, read some of this copy or type some of this copy, and then the rest is history. I've been typing copy ever since. Unpaid, by the way.
That sounds about right. Sounds about right. I met Miss Bluford in the early 90s, probably 90 or 91. And I know I've told the story a couple times. I don't think I've told it here, but I was 10 or 11. No, I had to be 12 or 13. You know, at Christmas time, the kids don't sit at the adult table. There's the adult table. There's a kids table. Well, I was sitting at the kids table, and she was at the adult table, and I was wanting. They always had better like slices of meat on the adult table, and there was a slice of ham I really had my eyeball on, and so I asked Miss Bluford. I said, "Can you pass me the ham?" And she looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I would like some ham, and the ham is better at this table than it is at the kids' table." And she passed me the platter, and I ended up getting the piece of ham that I wanted. I don't think the adults probably wanted it because it had a lot of fat on it, but as a kid, that was choice. So that was not my first introduction to her, but my first interaction with Mrs. Bluford. So
with ham.
So that sounds about accurate with what she said. She was always, I don't know. She was always a cool lady. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, she was politely spicy.
Yes. 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 So what in the 1960s when you came here, what got you in the writing for the call?
Okay, my assignment was actually when I went to see her, she put me to work. And so I worked for her for every Wednesday, just typing up copy, to get the paper out, for probably 6 or 8 months before we ever had the conversation that I originally came to seek her for. And finally she got around to it. She said, "What do you want with me?" And so I told her that I had been told that she could guide me and or at least get me started. Or, we as youngsters, we need a name, to throw around to sort of say, not to say these people are behind me, but to say that I know these people so that there is a commonality there.
Right.
And that gets me to the point about management. In most management opportunities, nobody ever starts with what somebody else did before them. They try to start rather than to meet the continuum where it is, they sort of start anew. And the starting anew is very inefficient.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it's easier or more efficient that if you just kind of get in line and get in tune and then change. And I know that's up for grabs, but one of the things that I mentioned in one of our Monday Night Football meetings was my advice to budding CEOs, and that was always to get an audit first. Don't wait till the audit gets you. You get the audit first because you have to have a starting point,
right,
or at least to know where the money went or how it was spent. And the value of a CPA is this is an independent opinion of where things are financially, because the collision course is filled with financial miscues. And so having said that, I think we talked a lot about that. And of course, I think she'd like to talk to me because I was looking for this audit and she didn't have the audit in her mind or in her possession. So the audit became kind of a ceiling conversation that we would sort of pick up every time we met. And so every Wednesday night we talked about audits. And of course, that little piece of minuscule importance has guided me throughout my career. But anyway, so that's how I met Miss Bluford.
Okay.
Kind of like you. Now, you're kind of spicy, Jason. And when I say spicy, you got a lot of exuberance.
I guarantee you.
And a lot of knowledge. And, and you got to kind of work to be your friend.
Not work to be your friend. Wow.
Well, I mean.
No, that's fair.
And a little quirky, but not badly. I mean, if you work with it, it'll work for you. And so that's kind of, people are quirky to begin with. And the most successful people who own their quirkiness.
Yep.
And you kind of in that budding period where you don't know whether you want to be everybody to know your ass is quirky or not. But
here's the thing. I'll be 49 in 2 months, and I will say I always find it interesting each stage of life. In my early age, in the zeros, let's say, you have no idea what's going on. You don't even know that you're actually alive. You just know you're here doing something. When you get in your teens, you're starting to express yourself, getting to know yourself, and you're focused on you. And in your 20s, you're starting to realize that what you do has consequences just beyond you, not just with you. And being 20 is interesting. And in your 30s, you start to own your mistakes and you own your wins. And you're starting to stand on your own 2 feet. And what I found in my 40s, at least for me, I don't want to speak for everybody, but is that I have quirks, oddities, and do strange things, and I should just own it.
Don't leave out idiosyncrasies.
And idiosyncrasies, absolutely. just own it. You are who you are. You already figured out how to own your mistakes and make your wins.
But when you're the head of an organization, you see those become talking points.
They do. They do.
And that's where the misguidedness comes in, because you're being followed, or you're leading people who are more concerned about your oddities rather than what it is you bring to the table.
Well, and I understand that. I have come to fully embrace that I was and am a black person that lives just outside of where I probably should live. Okay. And not just physically, but both mentally and I don't want to say emotionally, but definitely mentally. I am adjacent to a lot of things, and then at the same time in them. And I think that's what makes me both equally entertaining. I think is also what makes me fun to work with, and also think that's what makes me uniquely skilled at working here at the Call.
But you're an intellectual too,
Absolutely.
I mean, for real.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's that unique oddity part.
Well, it's not unique. It's kind of like odd.
Damn. Hey, have you ever seen the bus just come down the street? But that guy was across the street and didn't see it.
Yeah, you just got hit.
Yeah. Jim with his Mizzou stuff on just hit me and kept on going. Didn't even ask for fare.
No.
You okay?
No. You got hit.
It's all good. It's all good.
You got hit.
But it works for you.
It does. And that's what I was going to say. But I think it works. What do you think about where the Call is presently?
Well, as we discussed last time, it's kind of like route with tradition. It's kind of like being born in the wartime. That's all your parents ever told you about because that's all they talked about. That's all you remember. And so therefore you think the war becomes the definition of where we are and what it is we do. But sometimes it varies because you could have been born in the war and then, you miss all the good signs of beauty and things because you were born in the war. I think that's kind of your quirkiness fits because it's kind of an open book. But sooner or later, people need definition for leadership. So it works for you, but it may not work for the people you're leading. So you have to show the people what you are through the lens you want them to see you through rather than what it is you really are. I know that's a mouthful, but it's kind of like, as I mentioned on one of the earlier podcasts, my mom had 3 children before she was 20. Now, today that may not be an issue, but it's an issue as far as Medicaid policy goes or welfare policy goes, because had she been on welfare, she would have been seen as somebody who is draining the swamp, or at least draining the government for money. On the other hand, she got an experience at an early age of managing groups. And you see, are managing more than, it's easy to manage one person, but you try to manage 3 and you got some skills.
Right.
And so therefore, like at this time, you're coming to the Call with a lot of knowledge, but the Call hasn't been traditionally a knowledge-based institution. It's been a commitment, like the word call. You've been called to do something. And to do something is very important because if people don't know what you're doing or what you've been called to do, they won't know how to help you. And you see, the worst thing about followers are people who are depending on you. They only see what they need rather than what it is you got to give. So you kind of got to be somewhere between what somebody thinks you are and what you are is the answer. You can't be exactly who they want you to be, nor can you be exactly who you are. So you kind of got to be I guess for lack of a word, a hybrid, in that position. But anyway, that's where I see the Call going now, or at least you're getting the opportunity to re-sectionalize, if you must, the Call. And to redirect, as the lawyers would say, go in another direction.
I would go with that. I would think the things that, how can I put this? The things that I think about the Call presently are, we're stable right now. And then the Call's on pretty good, firm setting. So I don't want to get complacent, and I want to keep the transition going to where we're going. And I think that's what you're saying is that now is the time for me to strike that fire of this is where we're going.
That's right. It's time. It's damn time.
And I think you're right. I just don't know if it's the time to say my plan out loud on where we're going. I do know this. I'll give a tidbit of where I think we're going to transition into the other part of our conversation.
All right.
I'm going to, at some point, routes where the paper's delivered are going to shift. I know for a long time we've been trying to expand our route east into Blue Springs, further east into Independence, and further south into Lee Summit. I think we've hit where we're going to hit there.
Okay.
And there's some places that we're probably going to pull back.
Okay, so how is that interpreted by the people that you lead?
Well, and that's where I'm going with this, is that where we put the paper dictates certain things, such as story topics, such as who I want writing what stories and what have you, how Tracy's our editor, by the way, how Tracy moves about in the paper and puts stories out, right? If we're going to pull back a little bit from Eastern Jackson County, we don't need to focus on Eastern Jackson County as much, right? Mm-hmm. So a place that the paper has always struggled with, where I think it should go next, and I think there's a lot of African Americans there, is north of the river. I have an employee, Wes, who lives north. I'm going to lean on him here quite a bit to figure out where we should go with the paper. I also know, or go with the paper as far as stops to put in. And I'm probably going to pick up on a few more stories of what's going on up north. We just don't cover what's going north of the river. And I think as a city itself, as Kansas City, as a community, the Northland is kind of a, oh yeah, in everyone's mind, unless it has to do with the airport. Outside of that, north of the river is always, oh yeah, north of the river. And then I'm also going to, and I'm actively doing this now, I'm looking at expanding in northern Johnson County, just on the other side of Wyandotte County line. We've had a route in Johnson County before. It did fairly well. It did better in the north. And I'm going to expand that route in Wyandotte County to encompass a little bit of northern Johnson County. I don't think southern Johnson County has a lot of readers out there. I might be wrong. If I am, please email me at jjoseph@kccallnews.net. But I don't think we have a bigger base out there. I know we have a decent base in northern Johnson County. There's a lot of African Americans that live there. I know that because it's where I live as well, and I see those brown and black faces at sporting events for high schools and stuff like that. So I know there's a need there. Mm-hmm. And I also know there's a need for more coverage of what's going on there. So that's where we're going to go. Just a little, tidbit of information of where I think we're going. I think that's going to be our next kind of frontier for the next year or so. I also think that with following where the community is, I also think that the paper's focus on just African American things may always be our base, but sometimes I think we need to get around the periphery of those things.
Okay. All right. And obviously there's some risk to that.
Absolutely.
And, and it's whatever you're comfortable with. But I think it's important for you to be a blend.
Yes.
Rather than, an arch rival, if you must.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you kind of blend, and that's what the Monday Night Footballers kind of provide for you is a blend
Right.
of the old.
Right.
But we know very well that, there are times, situations, and most importantly, people change.
Right.
And so therefore, we gotta get ready for your change as you've got to get ready for what used to be.
But I also think people need to know that there's other community papers out there that we all we are all interdependent upon each other. Like there's a paper out in Martin City. They've used some of our articles. We've used some of their articles. Mm-hmm. Likewise in Prairie Village in Johnson County. There's a paper over there, a community paper over there. We have spoke with them. Tracy, I think, has used an article or two. I think they've used an article or two of ours. Likewise with Northeast News. I know we've exchanged stories with them several times. So I think people need to understand there are tons of small newspapers that all work together to cover Kansas City in a different light than what the big newspaper in town does or what the news radio stations do here in town. And even the big TV broadcasters. Not everyone has the same voice or the same intent behind their story. And sometimes a blending of that is what's needed. And that's where I'm ultimately going with that when I say around the periphery. When I say we're going to go here and there and our stories are going to be a little bit more tailored towards the areas that we move into, we're going to borrow. The call itself will always be about the community.
All right, so what you're telling me, you'll be kind of revolutionary in a little bit different way than has been in the past. Is that?
Yeah, that's and it's something that we've been doing quietly. At least Tracy has, and that's where we're going to start heading towards.
But a quiet revolution, is tantamount to having no revolution at all.
Well, we just don't want it to be televised. We just want it live on the internet.
Well, I understand that.
If you get my joke.
I think I was a little too serious with that. But I'm only saying unless you go out and tell some people there's a revolution, they won't know there's a revolution.
That is true. And that is probably the errors of my Gen X ways. I will say...
You call them Gen X, so Gen X, I call them something else.
Well, as a Gen Xer... I know being a slacker way too well, but we are quiet in our movements. And I think some people that's apparently annoying. And in others, that's an attaboy. It's like, hey, way to be. You're making change without making the boat rock. You're quietly making those changes.
You're trying to make a change.
Right.
And not rock the boat.
Right. And in doing so, I'm trying to pull that transition along with me. Now, at some point, they're going to figure it out, hopefully. If not, I'm sure I will run my mouth enough where they'll be like, oh, we've been here all along and didn't know it. Yeah. And here we are.
I want to share something with you. It's a good time to share it. I spoke to you last time about speaking to the third-year graduate law students and the health students up at Harvard. And one of the things I said to them was that you got your own ways of doing things already. That's what makes you here at Harvard. But in the real world, people are still stuck in the past. And I say stuck. They really are stuck. They don't want nothing new because new is threatening. Everything that has been new to them has not worked sufficiently. And, such is true with the call and, of course, where it is. Most things have not materialized. Now, they have been deeply rooted and ground kept and watered every day and whatever, but they've never sort of bursted the fruit yet. We can't take it home or we can't buy it or whatever. And so the call is kind of like that. So in some ways, you've got to kind of act like you're still in that vein of reaching the ground level to burst through and at the same time have your own vision. Now, that's where, we call morphed or whatever into something that you want to be versus what it is people see you as. And of course, but what has happened, to us as black people in general is that we've sort of learned how to be what it is we weren't expected to be better than what we could have been if we'd have stayed the course. Now, I say that like, who would have ever thought that the best picture of the year would be about some craziness, what you called sinners? Who would have ever believed that? But it shows that the people who were outliers in the last go-round of black people are now kind of like at the forefront. But they don't represent everybody because there's still somebody who still believes that maybe this is a scary movie, not a change movie. And so there is a little time that you've got to spend kind of transitionalizing, and that is often difficult with people with visions because their vision kind of trumps everything, and there's no intention there. It just sort of more on your mind because you see the change that you need to make, but the people ain't there with you. It's kind of like going to a new job and all of a sudden you're going to make a different kind of a widget, and the people are still working every day like they have been making the widgets for the last 50 years. I mean, there's a nuance change there. Now, we're still going to make a widget, but, what would the widget look like? But what will we talk about along the way? And you seem to have sort of, I won't say failed in this area, but you've kind of disregarded it. And you've got to kind of look at where people have been in order to change them to where you want to be, which makes civilization a very important thing. Things don't change very fast.
No.
They don't change very fast at all. In spite of the people who want to change things, they try to make you believe that they change fast or that they've already changed, and most of the time they haven't. And that's where you kind of find yourself. So you've got to be more like what you used to be in order for people to get on board with you and then go to the line. I'll tell you a good example of that. Today, out on Meyer Boulevard and Swope Parkway, there's still 4 stop signs. That's because way back when somebody decided that going into Swope Park was very important, so they sort of made everything conducive to that. But it took a long time to catch up to Swope Park. In fact, we just now beginning to go to Swope Park on some day other than Sunday. And, it took a long time. And when I say a long time, it may take 100 years because, in some ways we're still fighting the same battles that we fought, which makes the people believe that things have not changed. And here you are already in change mode, and the people ain't willing to change. Now, I think they're more willing to change than we give them credit for, but they're not changing. And I think, Wes, you can understand this. Yeah. It's like the preacher says on Sunday morning, can I get an amen? He's not really saying,
right.
Can he get an amen? Because they can give him that real quickly, say amen. But what he's saying is, are you with me? Are you following me? Right. Are you tracking me? Because where I'm about to go here is a new and different era. And that's what you represent, young man. That's what you recommend. You represent a change.
But I think that's also my quirk.
Okay.
And I say that because my experience of change has always been brash and harsh. That's how change has always been to me. And so my lived experiences they show themselves in that. And I know that that's not the case for everyone else. For example, when you are, and I've mentioned this several times, but when you are 8 years old and you're going to Sweeney Elementary and you're just enjoying life and having a good time, and then all of a sudden the next year your parents got divorced, you're moved out south, your mother's job has changed, your grandmother or great aunt are coming over to help out because of all this other change has happened to watch you. You're in 3rd grade for some of the year at Sweeney Elementary, and then you're in Martin City Elementary for the rest of it. Those things are very abrupt, and that is a time in life at age 8 and 9 that I will never forget. And not to mention, at age 9, the next year, I was in a bad car accident, broke my nose to where there was a hole in the middle of my nose. If you notice, there's a scratch here at the top. That's where the hole was. They had to fix that. And so those things, those abrupt changes over that little 2-year period really shaped how I view the world, even at that young age. And then as I get older, trying to adapt to my new environment and trying new things and failing, trying new things and succeeding, and ultimately figuring out that hanging out with certain boys and certain people can get you into trouble just by association.
I think we talked about that last time.
Yeah. Those are things that really focused my angst as a teenager and learning more about myself. And so I hear what you're saying. And a conversation we had in Nieces one day, I will never forget. You were talking about basketball transition. And I sometimes think, I don't think you see it, but I am actively trying to keep the old and move with the new, but keep the old same enough where it feels like home.
Okay.
But at the same time, I have changed that foundation underneath it. And that's what has actively happened. We have changed that foundation underneath the call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to mess with the floor that everyone's staying on, the older people. But there's a staircase being built now that's on top for the new.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of like a house, that the first floor, the entry level, is going to feel like home, and I want it to.
I think I get that, and I think I really tried to say that with this new movie, Sinners.
Yes,
and it's not a new movie. But it's kind of like.
Did you see that movie?
Oh yeah, I went to see it accidentally, and then got up and left in the middle of it because it didn't represent what I thought it was. I just saw Michael B. Jordan and a lot of black folks in the movie.
Right.
So I thought it was a traditional kind of movie about black folks being on their knees praying for their rights and whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't that at all.
No.
It was kind of like somebody that had gone into one little corner of the house and said this is where the house began. And you see, and making it sort of sacred just because it began at all. And that's not true. There's more to the house than just that corner. But more importantly, the fact that you got a bathroom don't mean that bathroom is as important as it is changing the living room or the bedroom or whatever needs to be changed. And I'm saying to you, you're caught in a transition period, and that's where we go back to the basketball.
Yes.
The basketball analogy is very simple, is that basketball is a game of trying to change quickly into whatever, stop doing whatever you were doing and do again what it is you need to be doing, and it happens all in a matter of seconds. And you see, but the reason basketball is appealing is because people learn how to do this, and that's kind of what Sinners is about. It's kind of about like the change that has already taken place in us, rather than the call and all these people still expecting the call to come on Friday and still be same way it used to be, or about what it used to be or what they thought it used to be. And that changed, so you kind of got to mix it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you see, why, and I go back to Sinners again, the movie people have learned how to lead change. They blend every movie into one of three categories, either something we have been, either something that we're going to be, or something that we're on the change of making. And somehow or another, it doesn't make any difference. They'll never go out of business because they trifurcate the world. I mean, and when we've got to learn how to do that, and that is sort of dance to the music that's playing, but use the old steps.
Right.
You see?
Right.
And you don't do that very well, or at least you don't do that very outwardly.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I would say I do it well, but I don't do it outwardly.
Yeah.
Because as the book Sun Tzu would say, that is where my enemy is. So I don't want to be where my enemy is. I want to be where my enemy is not. So to me, why play on that battlefield when we can just go around, just circumvent that, and then come back and be like, ta-da, we've already overstepped you and we're here. And I think some of that is nuance, and I don't do well with nuance. Some of that is just me not wanting to play that particular game. But I probably should play that game, but I don't know.
I don't know if you should even call it a game. It's just necessary transition. You know, like to the person taking the ball out of bounds at a basketball game has immediately got to go from trying to get the ball back to now having the ball in their hands. That's a difficult transition. And the person that takes that ball out has got to be the leader in getting it into the next level of the game. Otherwise, and part of that means kind of like understanding that somebody just got that ball off the board, you know, defensively and changed the nature of in a quick second, you're now no longer trying to get the ball away from the other team. You're trying to get the ball in the basket so it can count. That's a hard transition. And looking at time like we are, there are people who are still on their knees believing that we are still not given our rights in this world. And that's not true. That's not true. That's a past word. We're in a whole nother world.
It looks like the old world, but the world has changed.
The world has changed tremendously.
It has changed tremendously.
And you talked about Sweeney School. There are some people who still know that Sweeney School was off limits, even though it was on limits. And you know, and the harsh part about
I enjoyed going to school there, by the way.
That's fine. I mean, that's obvious. There's a badge of honor in there.
Yes.
Yeah, there is it. But every time you say Sweeney, I won't say most people who read the call are still at Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
Still wanting to go to Lincoln High School, still trying to get the same basketball court or maybe get something. I don't know.
But some of it to me is, and we have to get going here a little bit, but some of it to me is, and again, it is lived experience and a lack of understanding and a different understanding. Why worry at times about X when we're really trying to get to Z anyway? Let's just skip over X and get to Y. Now that might be the technologist inside of me. That might be the IT professional where I came from inside of like, you know, if you have a problem, sometimes to solve it, you just either bifurcate it or skip over it to solve that problem because the solution's going to work out in reverse downstream anyway.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's always good. And if it's not, one thing I will say that I feel like I'm good at is pivoting. I feel like I'm decent at pivoting. I wouldn't say good, but I'm decent at it. And if someone like belabors the point to me or comes up and goes, "Hey, look, I feel XYZ has happened and I don't like it." Oh, how can we help? How can I resolve that?
Okay, and
What are your thoughts?
I go back to the basketball analogy. The game has changed real quickly from one extreme to another extreme, and it's only the transition people who can get that done. And you see, you have been born, or at least given the opportunity to be a transition player and not want to be who you really want to be in the game. You want to be a scorer, you want to be a forward down the court. Well, that's later, but most importantly, you got to get into the transition first. And most of us see progress as transition. Most of us people who thought about it a long time, we only see the transition that's needed. And you see, and it's got to go in an orderly fashion, unless if it goes in an orderly meaning it must be understood by everybody what we're doing. And you see, it appears that right now you're kind of in another world, born in another world, adapted another world. And, you want us to be over here, but you're by yourself. And most of us believe that even though it's not important or not conclusive, that being over there by yourself ain't the place to be because the crowd is still over here. And so, kind of like Sinners, if I'd have been a little bit better prepared for Sinners, I might have been able to see it as an Academy Award winner. But it's kind of interesting that the people who made the decision adopted Sinners as a great movement, when in reality it represented something that was very painful. Can you imagine what people thought who really believed that the church was the centerpiece of the world and watched Sinners? I mean, golly, it looks like an indictment on our world.
Well, I haven't seen all the movie.
Okay, well.
My kids have watched it and it's on at the house or what have you, but I haven't seen all of it. I probably should sit down and watch it. Wes over here keeps telling me there's a lot of movies I just need to shut up and watch.
Well,
And so that's one of them.
Will you please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just I've seen Sinners and grown up in the church as well, and there are so many statements that are made throughout this movie that it hits the church, it hits music, it hits our history in music, our effects in the music world, and
one thing I noticed at the Oscars, and like I said, I haven't watched all the movie, but when they played the song from the movie, did you see the African mask dancer with the wood carved face?
No, I didn't. I didn't see that.
I challenge everyone to find that clip.
Okay.
Because most of us African Americans are from Nigeria, the Delta,
Right.
and the grasslands of Nigeria. And that folk dance that man is doing, the stomp, is very traditional. It's what we had done for thousands of years. And even the beats in which they use then and now, you see it creep into our music, unbeknownst to us, almost like it's written in our DNA. And then you also see the blues two-step and the country two-step.
Yeah.
All in there. Those are all indicative of our live life experiences as blacks. But I would say this and challenge this, and it might even be controversial. Most black people don't notice it. They don't see it or didn't see it for various reasons.
Yeah.
I just know enough to be dangerous, and I see the pattern, and that moment, and even my kids brought it. They're like, "Dad, that guy dances like you do when you go out and dance." And I like EDM, to be perfectly honest. EDM is electronic dance music, and I absolutely love house music and jungle and drum and bass and any derivative thereof. And some of the dancing that one has done from a traditional African sense, you see that translation directly to the dance floor. And so when I saw the different acts dancing, you could see our history from past to past, the current, to where we're going.
Yeah, and that was a scene. That was a powerful scene in the movie Sinners, because there was a musical montage where they went through the whole history from Africa to hip hop. And that scene almost brought me to tears. I'm like, wow.
It's a beautiful scene.
It is a very beautiful scene, and the thing about the church, sometimes the church stigmatizes music, They say, well, that's devil's music. And I saw a little bit of that being played out. And me being a Christian rapper, we were told that what we was doing was devil's music. And I'm like, well, there is no such thing as Christian notes. Music is music. It's just music. The only thing that makes the difference are the lyrics and the spirit behind who's saying what. And that was, that part just hit me really, really hard.
Right.
Like, I mean, the guy wanted to play jazz. I mean, it's different.
Right.
It's
Or
different.
devil's music.
Yeah, devil's music. Now there are influences
Right.
in every genre. In every
But what
genre.
keeps us back from progress, in my opinion, is the failure to accept the changes that are natural versus the changes that are imposed on you.
Yes.
And you see, the natural changes is that it doesn't make any difference what we think. And the COVID was an indication of that. COVID was an indication that it killed people. It didn't make any difference whether you were black or white. It killed people. Now, the COVID was kind of clear, but there are people who still believe that Tuskegee lives. You see, and Tuskegee don't live no more. There ain't nobody blaming you for whatever it is. The times have changed, as you mentioned about you going to Sweeney and getting a good education. That's in there, and that's the change that we're seeing along the way that we're failing to recognize. But most of us still live in yesterday when we just get off the ship. We just got off the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
And you see, so that bifurcation or that incongruence or that failure to thrive is something that we have to work on, which calls for a different kind of a leadership. Because I believe Martin Luther King saw the mountaintop, but he also realized he was still in the valley with most people. And you see, and that kind of leadership is kind of like what you defy in general, because you're saying, hey, let's go this way. Technology is where we need to go and whatever. And it's true. But we have a different kind of relationship with technology than you do.
I just think that we should, when it comes to technology, I think we should embrace it more than what we have and differently than way we do.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that another minority group or majority group does it better or worse than we do. I'm just saying that if we augment it ever so slightly, we could run this damn thing.
Well, at least we used to change.
Right.
And that's what Sinners kind of does. It kind of catches us on the cusp and decide that, since money is the real indicator, that we'll just do it that way. But it's also kind of like understanding what it is that we're doing in the first place and learn how to do it better. That's what's kept us alive. It has not been because we prayed. It is because we learned to do things better than the people who led the revolution for us to change in the first place. Right. That's what got us where we are. We're already apt. We're already equipped. We just need to know that. Or at least it's just like, it's like I've been dealing with the Medicaid change. Now, believe it or not, they're going to ask everybody every 6 months to reclassify themselves with Medicaid. Now, think about that.
Why?
Well, that's like asking everybody to join the church every 6 months. It basically is what I kind of said. But it's kind of like that's what our people are saying. Why? We've been poor. 6 months ain't going to change our life, and we're going to be in this position for a long time. But somebody up there says that too many people are getting on Medicaid, and they never, ever think about what it takes to do that. They only think about the technology that they have that they've got to put to use to be able to do that. And you see, so they call us dumb when we reject it. But it's kind of like somebody who has made a living out of flat feet and then all of a sudden tell them that they're wrong because they don't want to put shoes on. It's that kind of an economic economic impact that it has.
Let me ask you this, Jim. Do we need to have another meeting? Or not meeting, but podcast? Should we do this one more time?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think we need.
We're out of time.
Okay, I know. I get that, and I know we definitely want to kind of get into this, but it's every leader has to be tailor made, is what I'm getting at, because like if you're entrenched in the past as part of its tradition, you have to kind of understand that transition. And you have to go to the transition first before you get into the game that you really want to show.
Right.
If you don't do that,
you're kind of A out.
You're A out. That's right. And being A out is tantamount to not doing well at all.
Right. Absolutely. All right, guys. That's our time. We went a little over today, but don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. The call is obviously transitioning, trying to get more subscribers, more people. So help us out. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. I thank you all for listening. Thanks for your time. You guys have a great week. Thanks for the wake-up call.